The alien war academy stood on the edge of a storm planet, surrounded by black clouds and lightning that danced across the horizon. Inside the great dome of the training grounds, soldiers from many worlds trained together, learning to fight side by side. The sound of heavy weapons and clashing energy blades echoed across the hall. Among them stood one human, Ethan, a soldier from Earth. He wore his heavy armor, silver gray, with deep scratches across its chest. Every dent told a story, every scar on the metal reminded him of survival. Most aliens had never met a human before. They called his species reckless, too emotional, too fragile. But no one denied the strength of their spirit, even among warriors who could crush stone with bare hands. The humans stood out for their strange kind of courage, the kind that came from weakness turned to will. Ethan stood alone near the corner, adjusting the locks on his helmet. His armor hissed quietly as the systems checked for leaks. Around him, alien recruits watched with quiet curiosity. Some whispered, others laughed softly. He ignored them. Humans were used to being outsiders here. Then she entered the hall, Kalira, the alien commander's daughter. Her silver hair caught the blue light of the dome, and her eyes had that proud glint only those born to nobility carried. She was young but known across the base for her sharp words and quick temper. When she saw the human standing apart, she smiled faintly, a playful curve that made her seem both beautiful and dangerous. "So, this is the human everyone talks about," she said as she approached. Her voice was soft but carried confidence. "The one who fought without plasma armor on Titan Ridge?" Ethan didn't lift his gaze. "That was a long time ago." She circled him slowly, her boots clicking lightly on the metal floor. "Your armor looks heavy," she said with amusement. "Do you really need all that metal just to stay alive?" He glanced at her from behind the visor. "It's not about need. It's about trust. The armor doesn't fail me," Kalira chuckled. "You trust armor more than people?" "People break easier," he said simply. Her smile widened. She leaned closer, tapping her finger lightly against his chest plate. "And what about under this armor? Is the human as strong as the shell he hides in?" Ethan didn't respond. He turned away and walked toward the weapon racks, checking the energy rifle slung across his back. Kalira tilted her head slightly, her curiosity deepening. No one ignored her like that, not even high-ranking officers. The next morning, during training drills, the instructors paired soldiers for endurance sparring. When Kalira saw her name matched with Ethan's, her lips curled again. "Looks like I'll finally see what the man under the armor can do," she said. The other recruits gathered around the circle, whispering and smiling. It was not every day that a princess challenged a human. Ethan adjusted his gloves and simply said, "Try not to make me hurt you." Kalira laughed. "You couldn't if you tried," the duel began. She moved fast, spinning her staff with elegant precision. Her race was known for agility, their bodies light and flexible. Ethan was slower but solid, his armor absorbing each strike like a mountain enduring rain. She attacked from all angles, yet he didn't swing wildly. He waited, patient eyes reading her rhythm. Then, at the perfect moment, he stepped aside, caught her wrist, and twisted gently but firmly, sending her staff flying across the floor. The crowd gasped. Kalira froze, her arm pinned but unharmed. Ethan's hand released her immediately. "You leave your left side open," he said quietly, backing away. She stared at him, stunned. You held back." He gave a small nod. "You're fast, but strength isn't speed." Her pride flared, but she couldn't find a retort. No one had beaten her like that before, and no one had done it without mocking her. When the instructor dismissed them, she turned to him once more. "Next time I'll make you use more than just defense," she said. He gave a faint smile. "Next time I'll try." Later that day, Kalira found herself watching him from the observation deck above the training hall. Ethan practiced alone, his movements steady and methodical. He lifted weights that looked impossible for his size, then switched to hand drills, striking the air in smooth patterns. There was something different about him. Not flashy, not proud, just disciplined. When he finally removed his helmet, she saw the faint lines of fatigue on his face. He looked human, tired, strong, alive. Not at all like the emotionless warrior she imagined from Earth. The following evening, she approached him again. "You never rest, do you?" He turned, wiping sweat from his brow. "Rest is earned." "You think you're the only one who works hard?" she asked with a teasing smile. "No," he said. But I think I'm the only one here who can't afford to stop. Kalira folded her arms. You act like this war is yours alone. He met her eyes. Maybe it is. Humans always fight as if it's their last chance. She studied him quietly for a moment, then said, Maybe that's why your kind survives what others can't. Ethan didn't answer. He began sealing his armor again, the hiss of hydraulics filling the silence. Kalira stepped closer, her tone playful again. Why do you hide behind that shell so much? Are you afraid someone might see you as just a man? He paused, his hand still on the clasp of his chest plate. It's easier that way, he said softly. Armor doesn't judge. Kalira tilted her head, her silver hair brushing her shoulder. Maybe someone should, she said with a faint smirk. Otherwise, you'll forget you're human. Ethan looked at her, his eyes tired but calm. And what would you know about being human? Nothing, she admitted. But I know loneliness when I see it. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was heavier than the armor itself. Then Kalira smiled again. That same teasing smile from before, but now softer, gentler. If you ever take that off, human, I'd like to see who's really inside. He didn't reply. He only turned away, adjusting the last seal of his gauntlet. The next day, during live fire practice, an explosion shook the dome. One of the plasma rifles overheated and burst, sending shards across the floor. A group of recruits fell back, but Ethan dashed forward without thinking. He lifted a fallen barrier plate and shielded 2 soldiers from the secondary blast. When the smoke cleared, his armor was charred, his left shoulder dented deeply. Kalira rushed over, eyes wide. You're insane. You could have been killed. Ethan checked the damage calmly. Better me than them. She stared at him, heart pounding. You're not just hiding behind that armor, she whispered. You're carrying everyone in it. He didn't respond, just walked away as the medics arrived. That night she went to the repair bay where the human armor stood on the maintenance rack. The technicians had left for the evening. She walked slowly around the suit, her fingers brushing the scorched plates. It was strange how something so cold could feel alive. Every mark a memory, every dent a sacrifice. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Ethan stood in the doorway wearing a simple undersuit. Without his armor, he looked smaller, quieter, but more real. Kalira turned toward him, half smiling. You finally took it off, he nodded once. It needed repairs, she stepped closer. No, I think you needed to breathe. Ethan looked away, his voice low. Whenever I take it off, people see me and they always leave. Kalira's teasing faded. Do you think I will? He met her gaze for a long moment, then said quietly, Everyone does. He turned, picking up a damaged chest plate and placing it on the table. His back was tense, like someone used to walking away first. Kalira watched him for a while, her usual words gone. For the first time, she didn't know what to say. As he started toward the exit, she said softly, Maybe I'll stay just to prove you wrong. He stopped at the door but didn't turn around. You don't have to. I know, she replied. But I want to. He looked back, and for the briefest second she saw something different in his eyes. Something human and fragile beneath all that silence. Then he nodded once and left the room. Kalira stood there alone beside his armor, her hand resting against the cool metal. The teasing smile returned, but now it carried something else, a promise perhaps, or curiosity that would not fade. She didn't realize it yet. But that night when he took off his armor and started to leave, something inside her refused to let him go. The morning after the blast, the training dome was quiet. Repairs were still being made and the air smelled faintly of burned metal. Ethan stood outside, wearing his half-fixed armor, watching the storm clouds drift over the red sky. He had seen worse skies before, skies filled with smoke, falling ships, and broken hope. Yet this one felt heavier because of the silence it carried. Kalira approached from behind, her soft footsteps lost in the wind. She had left her royal badges behind, wearing only the gray uniform of a trainee. When he turned, she looked at the dents on his armor and frowned slightly. You didn't even rest, she said. He gave a small shrug. The armor needed work. You mean you needed something to fix, she said. Because if you stop fixing, you'll start feeling. He didn't reply, but the corner of his mouth lifted for a moment, the closest thing to a smile he'd shown since she met him. That same day, the Academy commander assigned a live mission. A patrol team was to survey the outer wastelands for missing drones. It was supposed to be simple. Kalira volunteered immediately, and when she saw Ethan's name also on the list, she felt something inside her tighten, excitement mixed with something deeper. The storm planes stretched endlessly under the alien sun. Their transport shuttle landed with a soft thud, kicking up red dust. Ethan stepped out first, scanning the horizon through his helmet visor. Kalira followed, her silver hair tied back, her weapon slung across her shoulder. The rest of the team spread out, checking their scanners. The air was dry and electric. Every few seconds, lightning struck the distant rock spires, flashing across the sky. The drones they were searching for had vanished near a canyon ahead. As they approached, Ethan noticed strange marks on the sand, wide circular prints too deep for the local animals. "Something big passed through here," he said. Kalira looked down. "You think it's still around?" "Maybe," he said. "Stay close," she smirked lightly. "You giving orders now, human?" He turned to her. "I'm asking you to stay alive." Her smirk faded, replaced by quiet respect. They followed the trail into the canyon. The walls rose high on both sides, and the air grew cooler. The others spread out, but Ethan felt uneasy. He had seen too many ambushes start in silence like this. Then the ground trembled. A deep growl echoed through the rocks. From the shadows ahead, a massive creature emerged, six-legged armored hide glistening under the red light. It was one of the desert predators known as storm lurkers, twice as tall as a human with mandibles that crackled with static energy. "Contact front," Ethan shouted. The team opened fire. Plasma bolts lit the canyon, but the creature charged through, barely slowed. Its armor plates deflected most of the shots. Ethan moved forward, raising his pulse rifle. "Spread out. Aim for the joints," he ordered. Kalira fired beside him, her hand steady even as the beast roared. It struck the ground, sending a shockwave through the sand. One of the soldiers was thrown backward. The others scattered. Ethan ran closer, drawing the creature's attention away from them. The thing slammed its claws against his armor, the impact rattling through his body. His suit groaned, but held. "Ethan!" Kalira called out, fear in her voice. "I'm fine," he shouted back, though pain burned down his shoulder. He raised his rifle again and fired at the beast's leg joint. Sparks burst out, but the creature swung its tail, slamming him hard against a rock wall. The world went white for a second. His helmet cracked. The armor's warning lights flashed. Kalira saw him fall and felt her chest twist. Without thinking, she ran toward him, sliding across the dust. The creature turned toward her, its mouth glowing with blue lightning. Ethan tried to stand, but his systems were failing. Seeing the beast about to strike her, he ripped off the damaged helmet, grabbed his sidearm, and charged forward. He fired into the creature's eye at point-blank range. The blast tore through its skull, and the beast collapsed with a heavy thud that shook the canyon floor. Silence followed, broken only by the wind. Kalira knelt beside him. His face was pale, blood trickling from a small cut on his forehead. She reached out, brushing the dust from his cheek. "You're hurt," she whispered. "I've had worse," he said weakly, trying to smile. "You could have died." "So could you," he said. "Next time, don't run toward the thing trying to kill you." She almost laughed, though tears pricked her eyes. "You're the one who ran first." "That's different," he said. "It's my job." They waited for the backup team to arrive, sitting in the quiet canyon. Kalira stayed beside him, watching the horizon turn from red to violet as the storm moved away. "You know," she said softly, "you didn't have to prove anything. You already had my respect." Ethan looked at her, tired but calm. "Wasn't about respect. It was about making sure no one else got hurt." "You always talk like you're carrying the weight of the galaxy," she said. "Do you ever do anything just for yourself?" He thought for a moment, then shook his head. "Not really. There's always someone who needs saving first." She smiled faintly. "Maybe one day someone will save you." "Maybe," he said, though he didn't believe it. When they returned to the base that evening, the others celebrated their victory. But Ethan didn't join them. He sat alone again in the repair bay, cleaning the damaged plates of his armor. Kalira found him there just like before. "You should be resting," she said. "I don't rest easy," he said. She crossed her arms, watching him work. "You risked your life for us, for me, and now you sit here fixing metal like it's the only thing that matters." He looked up slowly. "It's not the armor that matters," he said. "It's the quiet. It's the only place I can think." Kalira walked closer, stopping just a few steps away. "Do you think I came here to tease you again?" "I don't think anything," he said softly. "You're hard to read," She smiled, but it was small and tired this time. Maybe that's because you only look through glass. He blinked. Through glass? Your helmet, she said. You keep it between you and the world. Between you and me. For a long moment, neither moved. The air hummed quietly around them. Then slowly he reached up and lifted the cracked helmet off his head. He set it aside. His face was bruised, his eyes calm but distant. Kalira stepped closer and placed her hand gently on his shoulder plate. You don't have to hide all the time, Ethan. He looked at her hand, then at her eyes. It's not hiding, he said quietly. It's surviving. Then maybe you should learn the difference, she whispered. Her voice carried warmth that reached him deeper than he expected. For the first time in years, he didn't know what to say. He only nodded, and she sat beside him in silence. Hours passed. The storm outside faded, and the base lights dimmed. Kalira leaned against the wall beside him. You know, she said quietly, when I first saw you, I thought you were cold. But now I see you're just tired, Ethan chuckled softly. You're not wrong. Maybe you should let someone else carry the weight for once, he shook his head. People depend on me. I can't stop. Then at least don't walk away when someone wants to stay, she said. He turned his head, meeting her gaze. You're talking about you? Maybe, she said with a faint smile. Maybe not. He looked down at his gauntlet, then back at her. If you stay close to me, Kalira, you'll just end up in danger. I already am, she said softly. Because I started caring. Her words caught him off guard. He had faced monsters, battles, and storms, but never something so simple that could break his guard so easily. Kalira stood, brushing the dust from her uniform. I'll see you tomorrow, human. He watched her leave, her silver hair shimmering in the dim light. For a long time he sat there in silence, his helmet on the table beside him. The reflection of her walking away glimmered faintly on its cracked surface. He reached out and turned the helmet upside down, as if to hide that reflection. But he couldn't stop the small, almost invisible smile that formed on his lips. Outside, the storm began to fade, leaving the night clear. And somewhere deep inside, Ethan realized that maybe, just maybe, someone had finally seen the man beneath the armor. 2 days after the canyon fight, the alien base received a distress call. A transport ship carrying medicine for the frontier colonies had crashed in the northern mountains. The signal was weak, and the storm there had grown stronger by the hour. The commander called for volunteers. Before anyone else spoke, Ethan stepped forward. A moment later, Kalira followed him. The commander looked at her sharply. This is not a court assignment, Princess. The winds out there can tear metal apart. Kalira met his eyes calmly. Then they can tear me apart too. But I'm going. Ethan didn't argue. He only said, we'll bring them back. The rescue craft cut through the stormy sky, shaking under the pressure. Lightning flashed close enough to blind them. Inside, Ethan sat checking the armor's systems while Kalira secured the supplies. The other 2 crew members were pilots, silent and nervous. Kalira glanced at Ethan as he adjusted his cracked helmet. Still using the broken one? He nodded slightly. It fits. You could have taken a new one. It wouldn't feel right, he said. This one's earned its scars, she smiled faintly. Just like you. Outside, the clouds opened for a second, showing the sharp white mountains below. Then the alarm went off. A piece of metal hit their engine. The shuttle spun, the pilots yelling over the noise. Ethan jumped forward, gripping the control rail. Stabilize at 500, he shouted. Pull power from the rear thrusters. Kalira held on tightly as the craft dropped fast. The pilots tried to correct, but another gust hit them. The shuttle crashed against a snowy ridge, sliding hard before finally stopping. When the smoke cleared, the front window was cracked and half their systems were dead. Ethan unbuckled himself, scanning the others. Everyone alive? Barely, one pilot groaned. Communications are out. Ethan turned to Kalira. You okay? She nodded, catching her breath. You always pick the easy missions, don't you? He gave a tired half smile. You're the one who followed me. Outside, snow and ash mixed in the wind. The temperature was falling fast. They gathered what gear they could and left the damaged shuttle behind. The distress beacon from the crashed transport was still active somewhere in the valley below. The snow reached up to their knees, and the wind howled against the cliffs. The alien sun was already fading behind thick gray clouds. Every few steps, Kalira's boots slipped on the ice. Ethan stayed close behind her, his armor shielding her from the worst of the wind. "Why do you always walk behind me?" she asked. "So I can catch you if you fall," he answered. She smiled softly but said nothing more. After an hour, they found the wreckage. The transport ship was half buried in snow, smoke still rising from the broken hull. Inside were 2 injured crew members and several boxes of medicine. Ethan checked the readings. The storm's eye was closing fast. They had less than an hour before total whiteout. "We'll carry the wounded back," he said. "We move now." Kalira lifted one of the smaller med crates onto her back. "You take the heavier one." He looked at her and nodded. "Don't fall behind." The wind screamed louder as they climbed back toward the ridge. Snow hit their visors like shards of glass. Ethan walked first, clearing a path with his armored boots. Behind him, Kalira pushed through, her face cold and pale. When a sudden tremor shook the ground, they both froze. Above them, the mountain shifted and an avalanche began to roll. "Move." Ethan shouted. They ran. Snow roared down the slope like a living wave. Ethan threw the wounded man he carried behind a rock wall, then turned back for Kalira. She was still halfway up, trapped by falling debris. He sprinted up through the white blur, grabbed her arm, and pulled her down into a hollow beneath the ridge just as the avalanche thundered over them. The world went dark. For long seconds, they heard nothing but the muffled roar of the storm above, then silence. Ethan shifted, his armor pressing close against the packed snow. "You okay?" he asked. Her voice came weakly from beside him. "I can't move much." But yes, he pushed at the snow, opening a small pocket of air. "We're trapped, but there's oxygen here. The others might dig us out when the beacon goes off." She looked at him in the dim light of his visor. "You always expect to get buried alive and stay calm?" "It's happened before," he said simply. Kalira gave a faint laugh, then fell quiet. They sat in the cold stillness, listening to their breaths echo in the tiny space. After a while, she spoke again. "You saved me again." "I was closer to you than the others," he said. "You always say that, like it's duty, not choice." He turned his head toward her. "Because choice means I care, and that's dangerous out here." "But you do care," she said softly. "I can see it every time you look away." Ethan didn't answer. He just rested his head back against the snow wall. His armor was losing heat, but he didn't complain. He could feel her shivering beside him. Without a word, he shifted closer and wrapped one arm around her shoulder, pulling her gently against the chest plate. "You'll freeze," she murmured. "I've been colder," he said. They stayed like that in silence. Kalira rested her head against the dull metal, hearing the faint hum of the armor's systems. "You humans. You're strange," she whispered. "You live like you expect the world to break you, and yet you still keep standing." "That's how we learn," he said quietly. "Pain teaches faster than comfort," she smiled weakly. "Then maybe that's why you're stronger than us." He looked down at her. "No, strength isn't about armor. It's about who you stand for." Her eyes met his, glowing softly in the dim light. "Then who do you stand for, Ethan?" He didn't answer for a long time. Then he said, "For those who have no one else." She looked at him silently, realizing that somewhere along the way she had become one of those people to him. Hours passed before the rescue team found them. When the hatch finally broke open and daylight poured in, Kalira blinked against it. Ethan stood first, brushing snow off his armor, and reached a hand down to her. She took it without hesitation. Back at the base, the medics treated her frostbite and checked his suit for damage. When the commander came to see them, he said, "You brought everyone home alive. Good work." Ethan only nodded. Kalira smiled faintly, but her eyes followed the human as he turned to leave again. That evening, she found him outside near the hangar, sitting alone under the fading sunset. The snow was melting now, leaving dark patches of soil beneath his boots. His armor was open at the chest, the helmet resting beside him. "You didn't even stay for the debrief," she said, walking closer. "Didn't need to," he said. "They already know what happened." She sat beside him quietly. "You know what I realized under that snow?" He looked at her. "What?" "That you never really stopped fighting. Even when everything around you is falling apart, you keep moving." He shrugged lightly. "It's the only way I know how to live." "Maybe it's time to learn another way," she said. He looked down, thoughtful. "Maybe." The wind blew softly around them, carrying the smell of rain. Kalira reached over and touched the edge of his cracked helmet. You always hide behind this thing, she said gently. But when we were buried, you didn't have it. And for the first time I saw you, really saw you, he stayed silent. You're more human without it, she continued. And that's not weakness. That's what makes you different. Ethan glanced at her, his expression unreadable. You shouldn't get close to me, Kalira. I don't stay anywhere long. Then I'll walk beside you for as long as I can, she said softly. And maybe one day you'll stop leaving first. He looked at her for a long moment, the red light of the sunset reflecting in his pale eyes. Then he nodded once. For the first time, he didn't put the helmet back on. He let it rest on the ground beside him as they sat there together, watching the storm fade across the distant mountains. And though neither of them said it, they both knew. Something between them had changed. What began as curiosity had become something unspoken, fragile and real. In the quiet glow of the alien evening, the man who once walked away every time someone saw his face stayed a little longer than before. The storms had quieted for a week and the base returned to routine. Yet something in the air had changed. Ethan trained harder, but not for himself anymore. He often looked toward the far side of the field where Kalira sparred with other recruits. She moved with new focus now, no longer fighting to prove anything. She fought like someone learning from him, steady, patient, aware. That evening, the commander called a meeting in the war chamber. On the holomap floated a red zone. The border settlement of Akris had gone silent. Scouts reported unknown hostiles moving through the mountains, too organized to be local beasts. The outpost had human engineers and alien medics stationed there. The commander's voice was grim. We have to assume it's a coordinated attack. Volunteers will deploy before dawn. Ethan was the first to step forward. I'll go. Kalira rose immediately. Then I'm going too. The commander frowned. Princess, this isn't a rescue. It's a fight. Then you'll need every fighter you can get, she said firmly. Ethan looked at her, wanting to object, but he saw the determination in her eyes. She had followed him through storms, through snow, and through silence. There was no point trying to stop her now. At dawn, the strike team lifted off. The landscape below was covered in ash and mist. The shuttle descended near the burned remains of the settlement. Smoke curled from the broken towers. The scent of metal and dust filled the air. Ethan stepped out first, scanning the area. No survivors in sight, he said quietly. Kalira tightened her grip on her weapon. What could do this? Something organized, he replied. Not a random raid. As they searched, a sound rose in the distance, and a mechanical hum that made the ground tremble. From the shadows between the cliffs came machines unlike any they had seen before, walking on 6 legs built of dark steel with glowing red cores. The alien soldiers raised their rifles, but the machines moved fast, firing bursts of plasma that shattered stone. Take cover, Ethan shouted. He fired back, aiming for the joints, remembering the same weak spots he'd noticed in other war machines before. The others followed his lead. 2 of the machines fell, but more crawled from the valley. One of them fired a missile straight toward Kalira's position. She tried to dodge, but the blast threw her backward against the rocks. Kalira! Ethan ran through the smoke, ignoring the plasma fire slicing around him. He reached her side and saw her trying to push herself up. Her arm was bleeding where the armor had cracked, but she was still conscious. I'm fine, she said through gritted teeth. You're not, he said. He checked the injury, then tore part of his suit's undersleeve to wrap it tight. The radio crackled. The commander's voice came through. All units, fall back to the ridge. We'll cover from above. Ethan looked toward the ridge, too far. The machines were closing in. He knew they wouldn't make it if they ran together. He turned to Kalira. You go, I'll draw them off. Her eyes widened. No, you're not doing that again. I'm the one with armor thick enough to take a few hits, he said calmly. You need to reach the others. That's an order. She grabbed his wrist. You can't keep saving people by leaving them behind? He met her eyes, his voice low. I'm not leaving you. I'm making sure you live. Before she could speak again, he pulled away, sealing his cracked helmet. The systems whirred to life, lights flickering back on. He stepped out from cover, drawing the machine's fire. The air filled with explosions. Kalira watched as he charged toward the advancing line, firing with brutal precision. Every shot hit true. Every step forward forced the machines back. She could hear the echo of his rifle through the smoke, each sound both brave and terrifying. The team at the ridge saw him too. He's buying us time, one shouted, then we cover him. Kalira yelled, grabbing a heavy pulse cannon from a fallen trooper. She climbed to higher ground and began firing beside him, her aim sharp despite the pain in her arm. The sky burned with streaks of light. When one of the machines lunged at Ethan, he dodged under its claw and jammed an explosive charge into its armor. The detonation sent a shockwave that threw him to the ground. His armor cracked open, smoke rising from the chest plate. "Ethan!" Kalira screamed. She slid down the slope, running through fire and debris. When she reached him, he was trying to stand, but his systems were dead. The machines were regrouping, their red eyes glowing brighter. "Get back," he shouted, pushing her aside. "The detonator's still armed." But she stayed beside him, grabbing the fallen detonator and throwing it farther into the enemy line. The explosion took down 3 of the machines. The last one turned its cannon toward them. Ethan pushed her down, using his body to shield her as the blast hit. The world went silent for a moment, just white and ringing. When the smoke cleared, Kalira opened her eyes and saw him lying over her, motionless. She pushed herself up, tears stinging her eyes. "Ethan, hey, look at me." He moved weakly, his helmet half broken, his breathing slow. "Still here," he whispered. "You saved everyone again," she said, her voice shaking. He gave a faint smile. "Told you. That's my job." The rest of the team reached them and pulled the survivors back to the shuttle. The machines were gone, their signal fading. As the shuttle lifted off, Kalira sat beside him, holding his hand tightly. At the base, medics rushed him to the recovery wing. Kalira waited outside, pacing for hours. When they finally let her in, Ethan was sitting upright, pale but alive. His armor lay in pieces beside the bed, burned, broken, beyond repair. She walked in slowly, her throat tight. "They said you should have died." He looked up at her. "I've been told that before." "You're impossible," she said softly, "and stubborn. Maybe that's why I'm still here." She smiled through tired eyes. "The armor's gone," she said. "You'll need a new one." He looked at the broken metal beside him. "No. Maybe it's time I stopped hiding behind it." She stepped closer, sitting beside him on the bed. "You mean that?" He nodded. "For once, yeah." For a long moment, they said nothing. The hum of the machines around them was the only sound. Then she reached out and touched his hand gently. "When you first took that armor off, you started to leave. Do you still want to?" He looked at her, really looked, and saw not the teasing princess or the proud fighter, but the woman who had stood beside him in storms and battle, who had refused to let him disappear. "No," he said quietly. "Not anymore." Her eyes softened. "Then stay. For once, stay." He smiled faintly. "If I stay, it's because you gave me a reason to." Kalira leaned closer, resting her forehead against his shoulder. "Then let that be enough." Outside, the alien dawn was breaking. Light spilled across the horizon, touching the burned armor by the bedside. Ethan stared at it for a long moment, then turned back to her. "I used to think the armor was what kept me alive," he said, "but now I think it was you." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "Don't say things like that. You'll make me believe them." He smiled. "Good." The commander entered quietly, seeing them together. He said nothing, only nodded once and left them in peace. As the light grew brighter, Kalira looked out the window. "The storms are gone," she said. "For now," Ethan replied. "But they'll come back." "Then we'll face them," she said. "Together," he nodded. "Together." For the first time since he arrived at the Alien Academy, Ethan felt something he hadn't in years: belonging. Not as a soldier behind armor, not as a symbol of survival, but as a man who had finally stopped running. Kalira sat beside him, her silver hair catching the morning light, her hand still holding his. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was warm, alive, and full of promise. Outside, the sky turned gold over the mountains. The war was not over, but something inside both of them had found peace. And when the next storm came, the man who once hid behind steel would face it not alone, but with the one who had seen him without it, and chose to stay.